What if your life path had been set before you'd even been born? That's what happened to today's guest, Stephen Russell. The son of an abusive father and a mother who'd been forced into prostitution, Stephen was taken into care at the age of 6 months. Stephen moved through the care system from the age of 6 months to 16 years, living with 9 foster families in 2 care homes and changing schools 5 times in the process. Stephen says he could so easily have ended up in prison or a coffin, and nearly did after an incident where he was stabbed in the head at the age of 19. After that incident, and with some advice from his mentor, Stephen committed to changing his life. He set about a path to change the elements of his life that could have led him to prison or a coffin, creating a plan that he stuck on his mirror as a daily reminder of the life he wanted to lead. He decided to turn his pain into purpose, establishing Elements, a community interest company to provide child-centered social and emotional health support. As Stephen quotes, "I show my scars so that others know that they too can heal." Stephen, thank you very much for joining me on Success Matters. You're the founder of a support group, a charity called Element Support, and I've read your story, but I think your story is so powerful to share with people. It's there to support kids who are going through the care system, right? And you yourself went through that. So where do we begin with that story? How old were you when you went into care?
So I was 6 months of age when I went into care.
Okay.
Yeah. But there was a lot happening before my birth.
Right.
So to give you some context into how I was born, my dad's father was married to my mother's sister.
Okay.
Before I was born. So I was born in 1985. My father was married to my mother's sister in 1983.
Okay.
They had 3 children together.
Right.
And yeah, my dad was extremely violent towards his wife, my mum's sister.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back one day intoxicated and proceeded to physically, violently attack her. Went downstairs, got a 9-inch kitchen knife, came back upstairs and severely injured her. Her life wasn't obviously critical. It wasn't critical, but he went to prison for attempted murder for 2 years.
Right.
They went through a divorce. There's communication between my dad and my mother. My father and my mother. I keep saying dad, but it's father, not my dad. But my father and my mother, there was communication. He came out of prison in 1985 and then started a relationship with my mother,
Right.
which was obviously frowned upon by the family. Usually when I explain that to people, I kind of see the judgment on their face, and quite rightly so, because, under normal circumstances, you wouldn't do that to your sister.
Yeah.
Or to a family member, I guess, because, it's just abhorrent, really. But the story goes is that my dad was supposedly prostituting my mom.
Right.
My uncle, who's my dad's brother, told me that the only reason he had the car that he had at the time, which was a Ford Cortina, and the property that they had in the flat was paid for via my mom. When I delved a little bit deeper, he didn't want to tell me verbatim what was happening, but I kind of picked up what he was saying. 4 months after my birth, the police came to my mum's door. She was stopping with her brother at the time because my mum was horrendously and severely beaten up by my dad. He just ended up doing the same thing to my mum.
Right.
So she went into hiding with her brother. Police came to the door. They told my mum that her partner had killed himself in a car. He drove his car through someone's house. But they couldn't understand, the pathologist couldn't understand. So I've got the newspaper clipping that says it was a mystery death.
Right.
Because they couldn't understand, because when they did the autopsy on him, he didn't have high levels of alcohol in his system. And the road conditions at the time were clear. What happened 2 weeks prior was my father was involved in a pub brawl. He was hit over the head with a cue stick, and his friend at the time, a chap called Andre, said that for the next week or so, my father was talking about severe headaches and there was blood coming out of his ear. But what the pathologist is saying is it can't be proven, but the nearest guess would be that he had a brain hemorrhage.
Right.
As he was driving the car, lost control, blacked out, and then, the car went through to someone's house, essentially.
Right.
So now my mother's in this world by herself. She hasn't got the support network. She hasn't got the family close to her sister, but she's in this world by herself. My mum's been abused. She has epilepsy. She has undiagnosed mental health problems. She's 20 years of age at this point, and she still has clients to see. So I read my paperwork, because I got all my paperwork back from my care records.
Right.
And I read them, and they're very detailed. And it says that my mother came into Steelhouse Police Station in Birmingham and said that you can basically effing keep the baby. The sergeant on at the time said that Mrs. So-and-so proceeded to leave the police station and got into an unidentified male's car. And before she did, she said that she had to keep to this appointment. She couldn't not attend this appointment. And I believe what was happening was, even though my father had passed away, she still had clients to see. I don't know if it was at that point I was taken into care, but there was a lot of things happening at that point that I was taken into care at 6 months of age. And yeah, from 6 months of age to 16 years of age, I lived with a total of 10 foster families, 2 care homes, and I attended 5 different schools. And I suppose the easiest way for me to describe my care experience is how I always explain it: chaotic, turbulent, uncertain, and emotionally painful.
That is, I didn't know that story of the story of how you came to be in the world, and it's like, wow. I'm inside. I'm thinking for you, right? I'm already thinking that the start to your life was not fantastic, and not having the support network there, ending up in the care system, and then coming out the other side as a stable person that you are, who's looking to do more for other people. That is a really the fantastic outcome. It doesn't happen to everyone. So what is it, would you say, that led you to not end up on the wrong side of the tracks, if you like, or with the wrong crowd, and actually came to this realization that I should be doing this for other people?
Really good question. As a young child, I always had the belief inside me. I don't know where the belief came from, but I just remember growing up as a young child, and it was almost like something was telling me I was just going to be okay. I don't know how you're going to be okay. I don't know when you're going to be okay, but you are going to be okay. And, I look at myself as a teenager from 13 to 19. I could have very easily have ended up in a different place. I started smoking cannabis at the age of 13, regularly setting fires. It was something that I enjoyed to do. I enjoyed setting fires for some reason.
Right. Was it just fires of creating a bonfire, or setting buildings on fire?
No, setting buildings on fire. Wow. So I grew up on the Castlevale estate in Birmingham, and we went over. I was 13 years of age. Went over with another lad that lived in the home with me, and there's loads of tall-rise flats on the estate at the time, but they were all abandoned. Nobody lived in there. But we found an opening in there, and we got in there. We just found it fun to be going up and down into different people's flats and seeing things that people had left behind. It's almost like a bit of a treasure hunt for these children, I guess. But then I looked, and the lad that I was with, he found some matches and he just lit it. But all I remember was he lit the match. I didn't even light this fire. That's the thing. Like, he lit the match, and all of a sudden, there must have been some sort of flammable liquid that it went onto, because all these flames started rolling over very quickly over the ceiling, and panicked. We ran out. When we got to the bottom, there's just black smoke bellowing out. And because I was with him, I was the one who was, he was 10 at the time. I was 13. Right. But I remember getting a buzz out of it, like watching it. Yeah, the fire's always, even till this day, when we've had sort of barbecues or, campfires, I just find myself drawn, on a sort of zodiac thing. I am a fire sign as well, so maybe that's got something to do with it. I'm not too sure. I'm a Leo, but yeah, I do. Yeah, there's a fascination that I have with fire. But very delinquent, very troubled, very. I was the type of child that would pick up sort of asbos on the estate, and very rude and disrespectful, I guess.
Right.
And yeah, when I was 19 years of age, I was stabbed in the back of my head. I was living in Aston at the time. And by the time I'd got to 19, I missed a bit. I'd left school with no GCSEs. School was very, very difficult for me. Classic detentions, exclusions. Stephen doesn't concentrate. Stephen's distracted. He doesn't pay attention. The basic stuff, really, that a lot of children still get labelled today with. And came out, no GCSEs. My foster mum at the time said, you need to go to college. I didn't want to do that. Education to me was another way of saying failure. Right. I didn't want to put myself into that position of being a failure. So I went and found work. I started working at 16 in a warehouse, and I've worked ever since till today as a 38-year-old. I've never claimed a penny off the social. Right. I've worked for everything that I have from the age of 16. Okay. And yeah, I think well to kind of go back a little bit of what you were sort of saying, I noticed from an early point as well that I had a work ethic. And I'll just tell you a quick story. I was sweeping the floor in the warehouse. So I worked in a corrugated warehouse. And there was a chap in there called Cookie, and Cookie's one of those guys that had been working in that warehouse for years, absolutely years. And he comes along to me, and I'm just a snotty 16-year-old kid, a bit arrogant, And he comes over to me and he says, "Hey, Steve, you can tell a lot about a person by the way they sweep the floor."
Right.
And I was like, okay, whatever. And he says, no, seriously. He says, sometimes when people sweep the floor, they'll sweep the mess into a corner. They'll prop the broom up against the wall, then they'll walk away for someone else to get the rest. Yeah. He says other people, they sweep around objects and they leave the mess. They don't move things. He says, what I've watched with you, he says, you'll clear all the pallets off the shop floor, and then you'll sweep everything into the middle. And even when you've got the main bulk of the rubbish in the bin, I'll see you on your knees getting the last little bits in. He says, that's a work ethic. And I didn't pay much attention at the time. But as the years have gone on, I've never forgot him saying that to me. Right. Because what I realise now is whether I'm sweeping a floor or whether I'm supporting a child in distress, the ethic stays the same. How can I get the best out of this situation? Some would call it perfectionism, which may be true, but for me, it's I see it in my mind, and it has to be to the best it can possibly be.
Is that would you say that was instilled in you through one of your foster parents? Was a particular parent that kind of sticks in your mind as having instilled certain values in you that you've carried forward to today?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a few. I mean, my final foster family was a Jamaican family. I went to live with them from sort of just turning 14, and then I left there at 16. And they were what I remember about them is they were very disciplined. Right. They didn't move the goalposts. They were very honest with me, and they said, look, you're a part of our family. However, we do have rules and we do have boundaries, and sometimes you're going to test them, but we're not going to move them. And it took a while, but I started to fall in line, I guess, and just respect that was their way of living. Okay. And it was new to me because culturally, my dad's from Barbados and my mum's from England, but I'd never experienced that culture before. They took me out to Jamaica for 3 weeks.
Right.
They introduced me to the church. There was just a lot of discipline that they, and, Eunice would always mention quotations to me, and she'd say, like, Stephen, help comes to those who help themselves.
Right.
Don't walk around feeling sorry for yourself. No one's going to come and rescue you. You've got to pick yourself up and you've got to go, and then you'll notice somebody will come and help you.
Mm-hmm.
So they were absolutely pivotal in my life.
Okay.
The biggest inspiration for me was an ex-care worker called Dave. So
Right.
when I first went into my first care home at 10 years of age, I was just coming from what was known as my forever family. So my social work family's forever family. I was with them from the age of 8 to sort of 10.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I can describe it is the most abusive part of my care experience that I had was those 2 years.
Wow.
Won't go into massive detail about it now, just for time's sake. But the last thing that my foster mum said to me was, "We can't have you in this family. Your behaviour and the way you are, they'll put you in a children's home. So unless you start behaving, unless you, I used to have nocturnal enuresis, so I'd wet the bed constantly. I'd wet the bed all the way up until the age of 14. So when I went there with my little blanket to say, look, when that alarm goes off, I need your support to help me. She asked me and she says, what do you need that for? And I says, well, if I wet the bed, you can, help me and I can have a show. And she says, don't you think that's a bit lazy to have that? Don't you think you should be able to use the toilet? So there was no recognition, there was no thought process about my mental state. But there was a lot of things that happened in that time period. Anyway, I moved to children's home. What she said came true. I'm now sat on a care home floor, 1994, Christmas morning, wondering why. There's actually a picture that I've got on LinkedIn, and it's an interesting one because it's perfectly taken. I've kind of just sat on this floor, opening up local authority presents on Christmas morning, wondering why I'm not in a family. And in that home was a care worker called Dave. Dave was caring, thoughtful, happy, vibrant, playful. All of the children wanted to be around him. He was the one who'd take us on camping trips and play football with us and do all the activities. And it was just a lovely, beautiful human being. Fast forward a couple of years, I'm now 16, 17 years of age. I kind of told you some of the things I went through. I'm addicted to cannabis. And then I was walking down Hudson High Street, don't know why, but I heard a voice from behind say, Stephen, is that you? I looked around and noticed it was Dave.
Right.
And he said, have you eaten? I says, no, I haven't. He says, well, I'm only around the corner. My wife, Julie, she's cooking some food and my boys are there. If you want to come back for some food, it's up to you. Went back, had some food, and he said he'd like to mentor me. Next day, he comes down to my house in Aston, brings these self-help worksheets. I wasn't interested in it, didn't want to know about it.
Yeah.
I was a bit, I'll say I was rude, but, I was quite, I'm 16. I just, didn't really want to rats with that. But he kept on coming back and helping me tidy the house, helping me cook, helping me budget. He was with me for a couple of years, and then, as I say, I was stabbed at 19. He picked me up from the hospital, and for the first time, I could just see this look of disappointment in his face. Right. He said, Steve, I don't know what else I can do. At this point, it looks like prison or cemetery. I don't know what you want to do. As I could quite easily be seeing you in a morgue this morning. He says, not everybody gets stabbed in the head and lives to wake up the next day. Yeah. And it made me think about that. And I went back to the house in Aston. I seen on the concrete outside the blood stain on the concrete where my head had leaked all the blood out. And I looked at that and I went in and I just grabbed the nearest piece of paper that I've still got till this day. And it was a utility bill that was addressed to my foster brother because it was his house basically. I was just living there, but he'd moved out. Right. And I got this utility bill. I turned it over to the blank side and I wrote down everything that I had to do. So I wrote down, you have to move out of Aston. You have to stop smoking. You have to change your mobile number so people can't get in touch with you. You have to get a new job. You have to start driving. You have to start speaking to people with respect. Prove yourself you're a winner. You only have to prove yourself to yourself. Then I achieved every single one of those things within a year.
Right.
2005 was the pivotal year. So by 2006, I was already on a new trajectory. I was already on a new path. And until this day, you know, Dave says to me, well, how do you think you did that? And I says, well, with your help, you know, he says, no. He says, you know, I can only take you to the water, but I can't force you to drink type of thing. And he says, how do you think you did that? And I says, well, I don't know. There's no. He says, when you wrote that down, you got some blue tack and you put it on your mirror. You would look at it every single day. What I believe happened, what he said to me was, when you looked in the mirror and you seen that list looking back at you, for the first time, you was accountable to yourself. And you've never been accountable to yourself. You've always made up excuses. You've always run around thinking the world owes you something. First time you said, this is what I must do. Mm-hmm. You achieved every single one within a year. And then all of a sudden that propelled you in a completely different direction. Because if that hadn't happened, Sanjay, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I wouldn't be where I am today. High chance of prison, high chance of cemetery. So I know that's the longest way to answer your question, but yeah, it's been a mixture of some really good human beings, Dave, Eunice, Pat, good friends along the way, Adam, people giving me opportunities, John. You know, John was the care manager of the home that I first worked in. So here's me coming out of the warehouse with nothing but a forklift truck license and no GCSEs saying, hey, can I come and work in this care home? And the other manager said, listen, we'd love to take you on, but we're really concerned about, we're not concerned, we're wary of people who have care experience coming into this line of work because they might be coming in for the wrong reasons. And then I thought, okay. And then I don't think he was too keen on me, but John says, no, there's something about it. Let's give him a chance. And because he gave me a chance, that took me on a different path. Yeah. So I spent 13 years with them and I worked my way up from support worker, the senior support worker, to deputy manager, to interim manager of the home. I got my MVQ level 3, got my MVQ level 5 diploma for children and young people's residential management. Then that propelled me. I says, well, I'm going into family support. Spent 2 years as a specialist family support worker, got my person-centered counselling level 3 certificate. And all of a sudden I'm sat around and I'm thinking, what's next? What's the next chapter? And that's what I decided. I'm gonna create my own support service.
Right. Okay. So when did you set up Element Support?
2019.
2019.
Yeah. So it was as COVID kind of landed.
Right.
Well, yeah, it was pretty much as COVID kind of hit. So 2018, I was already starting to put ideas together. Because the one thing that I always say to children and young people that I'm supporting, and I say to anybody, is if you can get hold of a piece of paper and a pen, you have no excuses to make. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's where it all begins. You've got to get it out of your head, get it onto paper, and start to visualize. Because that's what I did when I put it on the mirror. Those things that I had to do, I started to visualize it. This isn't what I want to do. And I might not even think it's what I need to do. It's what I must do. Right. And what I try to explain to people is there's a difference between what you should and need and must.
Yeah.
Should do, you may do it, you may not. Need to, possibly, may not.
Yeah.
But when you make it a must, there's no other options. Like, this is what's happening. Tony Robbins, the great motivational speaker, he talks about burning the boat.
Yeah.
That sometimes you don't know how you're going to get there or even when you're going to get there. You just believe that you're going to get there. But when you get there, the first thing you need to do is burn the boat. And the reason you burn the boat is because you ain't going back.
No, exactly.
You ain't going back. So just burn that boat and make that decision. This is where I'm at. And I'm moving forward and moving forward. So yeah, 2019 is when Elements began. It didn't start off with how it looks today. Very, very different. In the beginning, all I wanted to do was go into schools and offer workshops.
Right.
Healthy relationships, diversity, supporting young men to make better decisions with themselves. And then it kind of formed into something different. I was thinking, actually, what would you have benefited from myself? It's what I said to myself. What would you have benefited from if somebody was coming in to see you in school when you was a child? Well, I thought about these elements. I thought, actually, my physical health, my mental health, what I like to call now physical fitness and mental fitness.
Yeah.
My social and communicational skills. It would have been great if somebody could have just educated me and mentored me on a better way of speaking and listening. but then also my environmental awareness, which is the fourth element. Being conscious of my environment, because not many people have conversations. We're very quick to talk about physical health and mental health and social skills, but not many people have the conversation around environments. As a child, I was in 10 foster homes, so my environments were constantly changing, different expectations, different rules, moving around, different ideas. Culturally, people say that I'm mixed race, but I can tell you now, Sanjay, over the course of my whole care experience, I've been called all sorts.
Yeah.
Half caste, biracial, mixed race, mixed parentage, dual heritage, brown, light brown, dark brown, half black, but he can't be half white.
Right.
And that's what I was told. I said to a care worker in one of the homes, I said, "So what up?" Says, "Oh, Stephen, you're half black." And I says, "Well, can I be half white?" And it says, no. And they got confused. I could see the confusion on the face. Like, well, no, you can't be half white. So how can I be half black and not half white? And actually, I don't know. So I just realised that if my friend Junior was black, he was just black. And my friend Adam was white, he was just white. So Adam wasn't dark white, light white, or mixed white.
Yeah,
and
he was white.
It wasn't dark black, light black, or mixed black. He was just black. So I was like, well, how come I have to be all of these? And then the adults in my life would often say, well, Stephen, you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
You know, you should be lucky. But I didn't feel lucky, Sanjay. I was thinking, well, actually, if you're telling me I'm getting the best of both worlds, then that must mean there's two worlds. There's a white world and there's a black world. And I have to navigate between the two worlds. And I just thought, well, actually, there's just one world, isn't there? So why do I have to go between? So there was a lot of confusion for me. I had a massive identity crisis.
Right.
It probably wasn't until my mid-20s that I made the decision that I will be whatever you think I am, but don't you tell me what I am.
Right.
If you think I'm mixed race, I'm mixed race. You know, Jenny, if you think I'm half caste, I'm half caste. Bill, if you think I'm dual heritage, I'm dual heritage. If you want to know what I am, I'm a human being living the human experience. That is it. As far as I'm concerned, race is man-made. There's nothing natural about race. When the Homo sapiens were there, the monk, whatever you want to call it, the cavemen, they weren't talking about race. They were just talking about survival.
Yeah.
They were talking about keeping away from the saber-toothed tiger so they can evolve. They weren't thinking about, oh, they're white, and they weren't doing that. And I don't believe in race. I believe in culture. I believe in identity. I believe in ethics, but I don't believe in race. That's just where I sit with it, and it's just my prerogative, I guess.
No, it's a good thing. And you were saying, I mean, what I was taking from what you were saying was, don't let other people put labels on you. Absolutely. Right? Yeah, they put labels on you, and then you end up living under the terms of that label when really you should be living your own terms, not someone else's terms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Element supports. Do you like outreach to schools? How does it actually work? What do you do on your day-to-day basis in regards to Element supports?
Absolutely. So the purpose of Elements is to formulate healthy connections across the elements. Right. So whether we're working with a primary age school child, a secondary school, or whether I'm going to be going to do some work in the prison, the mission or the purpose of Elements remains the same. How can we help you form better connections across those elements? So what we do, because I've got elementals that work with me as well, you see. So I became creative with mentors and elements, and I put them together. So they are called elementals. I don't like the term staff. So they are elementals, and they've got their own hoodies with elementals on the back. So it's very unique and it's quite niche for elements. So the purpose is the same. Our model's the same. We go in, we have an evaluation form. I use the old SDQ form, which is a strengths and difficulties questionnaire that a lot of doctors and pediatricians will use. Right. I felt that it was a little bit outdated, a little bit black and white, so I just decided to jazz it up and make it more colourful. And there are 6 questions on each element, so physical, mental, social and environmental. And there's an evaluation that's given to each person that is around that child, the teacher, the parent or carer, and the social worker, because a lot of our work is with children in care. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to gain a perspective from those people that are around that child, the key people, on what they think and feel about those child's elements. And the interesting part about it, Sanjay, is when we get that information back, we're able to look at some of the differences between their perspectives. So, for example, The social worker might say, well, actually, I don't think there's too much of an issue with Dylan's fitness. I think Dylan's quite fit and healthy. Whereas the carer might come back and say, well, actually, he's vaping, all he eats is McDonald's, he never drinks any water, and he goes to bed at 4 a.m.
Right.
And then the teacher might say, well, yeah, we've noticed that he seems quite, he doesn't really eat lunch. But then you can start to build a picture just around Dylan's well-being and health. But we would go in and we'd look at the lower scoring numbers. So basically on the evaluation form, you have a 0 to 10 scale.
Okay.
And it's very simple. 0 means it's the worst that it can possibly be. 10 means there's no problems. It's not perfect, but there's no problems. So they get to circle a number. And what we do is we add up all those numbers across the elements and we're left with a score that's out of 60. And once all of those elements have been completed, we're looking at for the lowest scoring numbers.
Right.
And then we put the numbers together across the social worker, the teacher, the carer, or whoever's there. It could even be mom, biological mom, and foster carer. So then you've actually got 4 different perspectives. Put all of their numbers together, and then what you will find is the lowest scoring elements. So there might be some disagreements on particular elements, but what we're saying as a whole group around this child is that Dylan's physical health is scoring the lowest. Why is that? Well, actually, if we go inside the elements that you've all completed, what you didn't realise is we're looking for the 0 to 5s. Anything that you've scored 0 to 5, you're pretty much saying that you're concerned about that particular area. Then we want to try and create an action plan around those 0 to 5s to try and create some ripple effects that can kind of boost Dylan and hopefully get him, a little bit higher on that score sheet. It could be anything. It could be social skills. It could be that, he's spending a lot of time on social media. There's concerns around internet. There might be concerns on a mental level where there's self-harm. Or it might be an environmental issue where, he spends all of his time in his bedroom. He never comes down, or in the classroom, they're finding there's difficulties in the classroom, but, or there's difficulties on the playground. So there's so much information that you can draw. I mean, I'll give you one example on a physical. When I've said to, when was the last time Dylan had a dentist appointment? He's been to the dentist. He never goes. He won't go to the dentist. He's never been. It's like, well, he's 14 years of age. He's never been to the dentist. And actually, I've spoken to Dylan earlier. And he says he's having a lot of toothache.
Yeah.
He's so scared of going to the dentist because somebody's told him that the dentist is such a horrible place to go. He won't go to the dentist. He'd rather suffer the pain than go to the dentist. So it might be that actually mum can't have that conversation with him. Social worker can't. Teacher can't. Well, if I'm spending time with him, maybe I can have that conversation with him and try and ease some of those worries. Next thing you know, Dylan's off to the dentist. Right. Next thing you know, he needs 5 fillings. Next thing you know, Dylan's feeling better about himself. And actually all of those fears and anxieties around the dentist. But sometimes it's a way in, isn't it? Because I always say to the young people, you name me a person that isn't your family, isn't your friend, and has nothing to do with school. And it's very rare that they'll be able to name someone. They might come out with the neighbour, or they might come out with the local barber or their coach. But usually the people that are in a child's life is school, friends, and family.
Yeah.
And what I explain to them is, I'm neither of them. So I'm not here to parent you. I'm not here to teach you like your teacher. And I'm not here to be your friend in that respect.
Yeah.
And sometimes they look at me, oh, you're not my friend. And it's like, well, I'm not playing with you on the weekends. We're not going to the bike tracks or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'll be friendly with you, but I'm here to help. I'm here to support. I'm here to champion. I'm here to say, right, how can we get the best out of these 12 weeks or these 6 months, however long I've got with you? So it's a journey. We go on that journey and we just see where we come out at the other side. I always say there's no reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
Mentoring's mentoring, but we do it in our creative way. We look at the elements, we build a trusting relationship, and we get some pretty good results a lot of the time. So I'm very careful with who I employ because I need people to be passionate.
Yeah.
So I have particular questions that I'll ask in the interview. Some of them are, let's say personal questions, but I want to find out about you, the person. I'm not really interested in your qualifications at the moment. We'll get to that point.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, if me and you have met for an interview situation and there's no rapport, there's no vibe, I'm not thinking this is I've got to be honest with you, Sanjay, and say, listen, you're a lovely chap and we've had a lovely coffee, but I don't think this is a fit.
Yeah.
And some of it, I can't really explain it. I just don't feel it. And you might say the same. But one of the things I say to people when they come in, I'm going to be taking on 3 elementals soon. I meet them for lunch. I meet them for a Costa coffee. I meet them on a mutual ground. I don't believe in this dress smart, wear your shirt and tie, come to the office. You sit on that side of the table. I'll sit on this side, and I've got a bunch of questions. So, what credentials do you think you can bring to this company? No. When we talk about environment, that is probably the worst thing that you can do, because the dynamics are they need a job and you need an employee.
Yeah.
And you haven't really got that room for, tell us about you. I'm not saying all interviews are like that.
Sure.
I just like to do it on a mute. So I'm saying, right, Sanjay, if you want to come and work for Elements, right, I'll meet you at Costa at 2:00 on Tuesday. Wear what you want to wear, whatever you feel comfortable wearing. I don't need you to bring your I don't need you to bring your CV. I want to sit down with Sanjay, have a coffee for 2 hours and talk about life.
Yeah.
At the end of that coffee, I'll let you know whether I need to see your CV.
I want to go back on the actual environmental thing as well, because you touched on that a couple of times. What sort of things do you assess from an environmental factor, and how, like, I'm making an assumption here that sometimes those environmental things can be the most difficult to change because of, someone's living in a particular area or neighborhood or so, and that's a big influence on them. And how do you help them through that?
Well, first and foremost, with the environment, it's not set up to try and change the environment, because often, exactly like you just said, I can't change the fact that you live on Gilbert Street, and Gilbert Street's one of the roughest streets in the neighbourhood. I can't change that. It's about the awareness. It's about the understanding. What's it like for you to live on Gilbert Street? I hate it. The neighbours always play loud music. I've been threatened with a knife in the area. And because not many people are having the conversation around it, it allows that young person to just talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I can't change the fact that you live on Gilbert Street. I can't move you and mum out of that local area that you don't particularly like. It's more about helping them have a space, providing them a space to talk about it. What's that like for you? We can do vision boards and things like, if you weren't living on Gilbert Street, where could you see yourself living? Are there any positives that you can take out of living there? How far do you have to travel to school? How long have you lived there? Where was you living before? What was that like? It's just more about that they've got that space where they know they can offload and get it all out of their head.
Right.
And at an environmental level, it's not just about the home, because I think with children, it's their majority of time is spent at home and school. That's usually, not unless they're wandering the streets or, they've gone to nuns for a couple of days. So I want to find out as well what school is like for them. One of the questions that people don't often ask is, what's it like on your journey to school? So before you've even stepped foot into school, what's that like? So I've heard so many stories. I had one young man that said to me, when he gets to the alleyway just before he crosses the road to go to school, he automatically becomes anxious and fearful. And I was trying to work with him to find out what that was about. And he was in like year 10 at the time. And he says, well, actually, when he was in year 7, he had a altercation, like a bullying situation where they got him in the alley. And it was just a trigger point for him that when he went through that alley to cross the road, he knew he was safe at the time, but the memories of what had happened to him come back. And it's like, well, who has those conversations with the children? It's very rare that people will do that. And I just think it just brought him a measure of peace, really, that he was able to talk about it and express it. Because, not everybody had, been able to do that with him. I always talk about the importance of silence in the sessions as well. That I say this to the elementals is, don't be afraid to leave a window of silence. And what I mean by that is that a lot of the time, children, they might not understand some of the words that you're using, but they might not want to tell you that. I mean, a lot of the time they won't tell you because they might not want to feel the shame of, I didn't understand what you were saying. So what I say is, right, so if I'm working with Dylan, I always use Dylan as an example. And, Dylan said something to me and then I've paraphrased it and I'm like, what I hear you saying, Dylan, is this about your dad, blah, blah, blah. and I couldn't put it back to him. If in that moment when I've put it back to him, Dylan doesn't respond immediately, it's not my position to change the narrative or to move Dylan into it. I have to sit there with that for a moment. Mm-hmm. You can't put a time on it. I'd say, it is a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in a situation where you're just not saying nothing, because that can create awkwardness in the room. Mm-hmm. But it's about observing their body language. And if I can see in Dylan's face that he is pondering, he's thinking, he's like, oh, okay, then it's not my silence to break. This is my quotation, you see. It's not your silence to break. Leave it open. See where he goes with it. And I remember working with a lad, Tom, and he mentioned something to me. I kind of paraphrased it back to him, and I could just see him sat there in his chair, looking around and pondering. And I think we must have sat there for about 30 seconds in silence, and then he came out. And I left that session feeling so proud, because I thought that was probably the first time where I could have said anything. I could have just interjected and said something, but I left it and I left it and I left it. And I know that he would have felt really listened to. I mean, how many times have you been in a conversation with somebody and they're listening, but maybe they're not attentively listening? Because I think there's a difference between the two. It's like, I heard what you said to me, but I'm not really present.
People often listen to respond, not listen to listen, right? They're not present in actually what you're saying.
Absolutely. So they're already thinking of what to say next, and that's not listening. You're playing a record in your head of what to say, and it's just that thing of, we feel far more listened to if people just leave those moments of silence. That if we're having a conversation, you don't have to respond straight away. Maybe you leave a couple of seconds of, I kind of hear what you're saying. You might nod or, show me that you are sort of listening. But conversations don't usually work like that. We kind of just have these. You say something, I say something. You say something, I say something. Yeah. So,
like table tennis, right? Ping pong across each other, rather.
Absolutely.
Momentary pause, just to let it sink in, right? Let that person process it. And particularly if it's something difficult that they want to say, they might be just like getting the right words together in their mind, right? And you then go and interject with something, and you've lost that moment. So it's very important to let them have that pause and that thinking space.
Absolutely, 100%.
So as you know, the title of this podcast series is Success Matters.
Yeah.
So what would you say success looks like for you?
For me personally, I kind of look at it quite multidimensional, actually. So one of the ways that I look at success is it's a state of being. Am I being successful? Do I feel successful? And then I suppose the other way of looking at it is, have I been successful? When you look back, 5 years, sometimes I do like a little 5-year plan in my head and be like, right, where were you 5 years ago? How have you got to where you are? And you think, I feel successful. I feel fulfilled. I feel like I'm on the right path, doing the right things. In terms of my definition of success, for me, I would say it's finding a measure of fulfillment. I think fulfillment and success are very much aligned with each other.
Yeah.
Just that feeling of accomplishment, that feeling of, you had a plan, it didn't go to plan, but something beautiful still came out of it. And I think that success isn't always defined by, I need to reach this mountaintop. It's how did you get to the mountaintop? The scrapes, the bruises. We talk about the journey is more important than the destination. So I always use, like, when I think about success models with young people, I use Mount Everest as an example of that. That it will take you approximately 6 to 12 months to train to climb Mount Everest. And then you've got to go to base camp on Mount Everest before you even start that actual climb. And it can take months to do that. I think it takes something like 4 months to climb Mount Everest in its entirety. Might be right, might be 6 months. I think it's 4 to 6 months to actually climb Mount Everest to the top.
Right, from the bottom to base camp and then up to the top.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So when you reach the top of Mount Everest, I believe you've got about 20 minutes up there. You don't have long because the air is so thin. Then you've got to make that descendancy back down. While you're on there for 20 minutes, you've made it. You've got to the top. You can put your flag in and you can take your selfie and you can send it to your friends. I'm at the top of Mount Everest.
Yeah.
I'm successful. For me, those 20 minutes are no comparison to the months of hard work that you had to do.
Mm-hmm.
The time, the energy, the late nights, the research, the fear that you had to go through. Climbing Mount Everest is not a simple feat.
No.
People's bodies are still on Mount Everest in their natural state because they're frozen, because they can't get the bodies back down. Though it's not for the faint-hearted. It's a very fearful thing to do. You had to go through all that. So when you're stood up there for 20 minutes, yes, it's paid off. Yes, you're there, but then you've got to come back down. And I just like to remind students and young people that it's the how you got to where you got to that matters. Not so much that you got there, because even though you've made it and you've got there, or, you've passed your GCSEs, what next? Well, then you're off to college. Okay, great. You've done well at college. What next? Well, I'm off to university. Great. You've got your degree. What next? Well, I'm going out into the workforce. Great. What next? I might have my own business. Great. What after that? What are you going to do after your business? I think I might start to have my own family. Great. What after that? Oh, I'm going to watch my kids grow up. Great. Well, so it's constantly evolvement. It's not that you ever just get to a place, because all of a sudden you look back on your accolades and you look back at your yearbooks and you look at, oh yeah, remember that? It's like, well, that's been and gone. You've done that. But it's always a what next. I kind of look at it as like a book of chapters that, that was a fantastic chapter in your life, but that was only chapter 9. You've now got to go on to chapter 10. So yeah, I think when I think about success, I think of it as an evolution, that it's constantly evolving, and that you shouldn't rest on your laurels. You shouldn't just think, I've made it. No one's made it. No one's ever made it. And I don't use money and wealth as a denominator of success. There are people in Sudan that are very successful, but they just about have a bowl of rice to eat, but that's success to them. You look at what's happening over in Israel at the moment. The fact that somebody got out alive with their family, considering what's happening, that's success. You successfully got out of Iraq, of Israel, on a plane, back to Britain, back to America, safe and sound. You might have a couple of bruises or whatever that might have been, but you're alive and you've got your children. That's far more successful than those hostages that are potentially waiting to die. So I think sometimes people mix success with money and wealth and fame and celebrity. That, for me, that's not what success is. Sometimes success is, did you make it to the next day?
Yes.
Did you manage to repair that friendship? Did you manage to rekindle that relationship with your mom? Someone who's coming out of the care system, success might just be, my dad's an alcoholic, he's struggling. We didn't have a relationship as a young child, but now I'm supporting him and he's getting better.
Yeah.
That's got nothing to do with money. That's got everything to do with relationship. And that, for them, is success. So, yeah. I know that's a very long way of explaining it, but
there's a lot of powerful statements within what you said. And when you talked about fulfillment, and I was just taken back to your I must do these statements that you wrote down when you were 19. Do you still do that? Do you still have your must do statements that you look at every day as those chapters that you're writing?
All I do is write down. Like, I love it. I think you get like a hit of it. Is it endorphins when you get that happy feeling of creating a list of, say, priorities and then just managing to tick it off? It's such a great feeling to tick something off and to cross it out and be like, yeah, I've accomplished that. I've done that. to the best of my ability. So yeah, the answer's yes, I do. I journal. I've got journals. I've still got my journal from when I started. I literally went out and I got a journal and I called it my ideas book. And it's almost like my playbook. That was the first thing that I did to get me off the ground with Elements to get into schools. The other story that I didn't tell you was in the beginning when I was setting up Elements, I created these packs for schools and I specifically found the individuals in the school to address it to. It wasn't just to, whatever school it was to Sanjay, who's the DSL in that school. And I created about 90 something packs. I just stood in the post office, so excited. I spent like £48 on postage stamps and I'm there and I'm like ready to send them all off. I'm so excited. And then a couple of weeks went by, nothing. And Dave said to me, he says, just give it some time, maybe do some follow-up emails. I did some follow-up emails, nothing. One primary school in Coventry got back to me and they said, thank you for your pack. We've received it. It's not something we're interested in at the moment. And then I just had this feeling of deflation.
Right.
What's the point? What I realise now is it was the universe saying, how bad do you want this? Because this is not going to be easy and you've got to fight for this. So then I kicked into that gear of that little Stephen of tenacity, resolute. We're doing this and we're going to knock on as many doors as we need to knock because I only need one door to answer. And that's what I say to young people. You can knock 5,000 doors. You only need one of them to answer.
Yeah.
And if you do it enough times, Denzel Washington's got a great quotation. If you hang around the barbers enough, you'll get a haircut. I just kept going and kept going. And in a school, they let me in. And away I went. And then it's called momentum, isn't it? Once you get your foot on that step, Les Brown's got a great quotation. You don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great.
Yeah, that's a brilliant quotation.
When I heard that quotation, it really transcended. And I thought, I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to know the whys and the hows and the wheres and have the money and the finances and the backing and the networks. I've just got to have ideas. I've just got to write them down. And before you know it, you're away. Like the universe will give it up to you if you show it that you mean business. Because if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And that's why it's not easy. That's why you have to work very hard for what you want. Les Brown's got another quotation. In life, if you do what's easy, your life will be hard. But if you do what's hard, your life will be easy.
Right.
I loved that. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I think, in the beginning, I spent a lot of time listening to some motivational, Les Brown, Tony Robbins, Simon Sinek, Gary Vaynerchuk. I listened to a lot of them and I just allowed them to saturate my mind with all of this sort of pump up and come on, you can do this.
Yeah.
And
and here you are.
Here I am on the journey.
On the journey, indeed. Yeah, that's great. I've got, as you know, I ask a previous guest to ask a question for my next guest. Talks about how I borrowed this idea from another person you probably listened to a lot, Stephen Bartlett, and the Diary of a CEO.
Absolutely,
So the question that my previous guest asked is...
Talk through an event in your career that initially felt like a failure that now feels like one of your biggest wins.
That's a really good question.
I reckon there's probably a lot that you initially thought was a failure, but because you got a positive mindset, you kind of like put it to the back.
I don't know what the word
start with it, Well, exactly.
It's kind of, I'm trying to translate that question to on a step back.
You had or something,
Yeah, what went wrong, but it went right type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, because it's a career question, I'm not going to relate it to Elements. I'm going to be very open and honest here. So when I was 19, 20, I worked in another warehouse and long story short, I stole thousands of pounds worth of property from this company. Well, I was approached by one of the couriers and he said to me, all you need to do is move these pallets into the bay. I'll pick the pallets up and I'll go and sell them. Christmas is coming and it's 25 grand each. So because I'm a very green 19-year-old wanting money. I just thought, well, that's simple. I'll move the pallets and then you can... This is the failure part. This is where I failed. And I basically moved them too early. My supervisor came in and said, why have you moved the pallets?
Yeah.
And also, why are you even here? Because you weren't meant to be doing no overtime. And I never had an answer for him. And they kind of put two and two together and they were like, well, we believe... I did an investigation and I was brought in. And they said, we believe that you were trying to steal these pallets. And my argument at the time, because I was just trying to back myself out of it, I was like, how am I going to get those pallets in my Vauxhall Corsa? Right, that ain't happening. Yeah. So we kind of had a mutual agreement that I would hand my notice in rather than them pushing the investigation further. Now, what happened after that was I went to work for DHL. And at DHL, I was forklift driving, but I also met my children's mother.
Right.
Had I had not attempted to steal those pallets, I wouldn't have had to leave. If I didn't leave, I wouldn't have gone to DHL. And if I didn't go to DHL, I wouldn't have met my children's mother, which means I wouldn't have the absolute beauty, wonder, God's gift of my 3 children. So yes, I massively failed in terms of stealing. I should never have done it. I regret it to a point. I can't regret it because of the outcome, but I regret it to a point. But I also understand that the alternative of not having that experience means, 1, I don't have my children, but 2, I'm probably not even here. You know, and isn't life funny how just one little domino piece can move us in a completely different, and we don't even know how it works. I just find it fascinating that, you know, you say to anybody, like, how did you get to where you are? And it's like, wow, it's a bunch of different things that happened. And I think if you go far enough back into your history, you'll realize that you had to make some really bad decisions to get you to where you were. It's just that at the time when you were making those bad decisions, you didn't realize where you were going to end up. And that's why I always say, you know, when you think about anything good, whether it's your children or your business or your family or whatever that is, you know, you go back far enough and you'll realize that actually, you know, something had to give really to get you to where you are. So yeah, that would be my answer. You know, my children.
That's a great answer.
are, everything to me. And, you know, even though, you know, me and their mom aren't together anymore because we just couldn't work it out together, you know, we just kind of reached a bit of a stalemate, I guess. We co-parent, we're friends, we're amicable, we get on really well. We actually get on better now that we're not actually living together. Got a fantastic relationship with my children. The quality of time I have with my children is far better now. All I do is look forward to seeing them. Whereas before, I think I took it for granted living with them and just thinking that I'm always there with them. Whereas now, it's far better, far fresher now. So that would be my long. I feel like I've given long answers today, but
it's great. It's just so insightful, this conversation, and the way as you say, that failure led to an outcome that you would never have thought of at that point in time. But what a fantastic outcome, right? To have your children and to met the mother of your children. So, do you have a question for my next guest?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
What's stopping you today to get you where you need to be tomorrow?
So Stephen, if people want to get in touch with you to find out more, how best should they contact you?
I'm on LinkedIn. If you put Stephen Russell into LinkedIn, I should pop up. On Instagram. Instagram handle is Stephen Russell 293. We're on YouTube. We've got our own YouTube channel. There's a lot of helpful videos on there for parents and for teachers who might be struggling, and for young people as well. We've also got the little Stephen song on there too. And in YouTube, it's just called Elements Support. The channel should pop up there. And lastly, we've got the website, which is elementssupport.com. And that will give you all information about Elements and how we can best support your needs for your children and young people.
That's great. So we're at the top of our time now, Stephen. It's been a truly fascinating conversation, and I mean, I could have spoken for another 2-3 hours. It's there's so much in your story here and your life experiences that are just like, from the moment you started with the story of your birth, you had me hooked. And it's like, wow, Stephen has gone through so much even before he was born. He'd already started to go through so much in life, and to be the other side and to be the man you are today, I mean, I take my hat off to you that, you've looked at yourself, you looked at what life needs to be, you looked at what you want from life, and you've gone for it, right? You've actually done things to make it happen rather than saying, oh, if only I'd done that, if only, should have done that. So, no, thank you very much for taking part today.
Absolutely, an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
If you'd like to find out more about how you can find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.